For the first time, I felt that my freedom in this country was being jeopardized, and that I felt that I really needed to make a work that expressed an immigrant's perspective about America. My name is Shirin Neshat, and we're at the Broad Museum in Los Angeles. I am born in Iran, in the small city of Qazvin. I immigrated to the United States in about 1975. Today, I live and work in New York. The challenge was really how to edit the abundance of work that I've created since I started to be an artist into a comprehensible monograph, because we wanted to show a diversity of photographic work and video-based work. And I think the selection that we made were just the right choices, but I think the editing of the work was the biggest challenge. The title, I Will Greet the Sun Again, is the title of a poem by a very well-known Iranian poet called Forugh Farrokhzad. In Farsi is به آفتاب سلامی دوباره خواهم داد. And it's a poet that I have repeatedly used in my work as inscription over the photographic work, and as a woman that I've really idealized for a long time. But I think the meaning of it is something about the fact that for the longest time, since I arrived in this country, I have not returned to Los Angeles because I've had very, very dark moments and memories. And coming back so many years later with an exhibition in this magnitude to the Iranian community is almost like I'm looking for sunshine again.
روی خواب مارمولک کجا بود؟
روی دیوار.
چه رنگی بود؟
رنگ دیوار.
I'm very interested in literature and poetic language because I'm very Iranian, and I think in our culture, for a lot of people, that's how they deal with the world. That's how they cope with a lot of the issues that they face as human beings. Poetry, for a lot of us, it's more a kind of form of philosophy. It's like living in our imagination. It's very profound. But the narratives, I think a lot of them are based in some of the issues and characters that I really identify with. Much of the concepts and narratives are about my own life and some of the issues that I like to frame. And then the poetic language is introduced to it as a way of shaping it, as a way of expressing the narrative, if that makes sense. Every work, whether it's photographic or video, there's always this element of poetry, allegory, and that's for sure because I'm very Iranian.
یک سمندر.
یک سمندر.
When I was making the Woman of Allah series, most people were very interested in the work with calligraphy. It was more exotic somehow. And then in 1996, I shot the only work that I ever shot in Iran. I was very interested in bringing contemporary Iranian look, but take it back to that period that was another history that was not Islamic, but it was Qajar period, very much influenced by European photography. That was the last time I was in Iran. In fact, the contact sheet came out with me, but no one was interested in showing this work because it didn't have any calligraphy, you see? So they're being seen for the first time.
اون گم شده بود.
او؟
I basically think that art is usually a reflection of an artist's state of mind. I'm not interested in making autobiographical work. I'm very interested in making work that is very personal and brings my own experience and frames it, but through other characters and narratives. So, for example, the story of Woman Without Men, about several women going and taking refuge at an orchard, self-exile in this ephemeral, outer-worldly space. It's really allegorically very similar to my desire to have a place where I would feel safe, you know. Or the video Tuba is also showing here about this garden and the people running toward it. Is everyone wants to sort of feel safe and sort of look for a place to be self-exiled, you see. So I think all of my personal narratives are ingrained into the work that I do.
من گم شده بودم. من همه جا گشتم. هیچ کسی منو نمیدید.
When I started the Book of Kings, it was about the Green Movement. And it was a moment where, for the first time in my life, I was very invigorated to become an activist, and I'm not usually an activist. I was, like millions of Iranians, very inspired by this uprising. So I made this work that years later to capture this moment of history. But if you know very clearly, right after the Green Movement in Iran, the Arab Spring developed that was similarly to Iranian movement. It was all a movement by young people, and it was people who didn't necessarily want anything but justice and democracy, and it was a very special revolutions that were spreading everywhere and all led by young people. What was really interesting for me that during the Green Movement, I was not in Iran, but I was in Egypt during the Arab Spring. I decided to create Our House is on Fire, which was about the Arab Spring, of the elderly, the people whose children were the ones that were activists. And the tragic ending of all of this euphoric movement ended up being a tragedy for these families, the loss of their children. So I went and set up a studio in Cairo near Tahrir, and I recruited these elderly people. I interviewed them and they cried as we conversed about the subject. And I photographed them, and what they said is written on their faces. So for me, Our House is on Fire sort of closed the chapter of the Book of Kings. So they were related, but this was older people, and those were all the faces of the youth.
مرئی بود.
دهکده کجا بود؟
For the longest time, I did not feel that I was prepared to make a work that reflects on the American culture, because I always felt that I'm not American enough, or I'm not close enough to the subject, and that I always made work about the Middle East or Iran. But after the Trump administration and all these problematics that followed for all of us, especially after the immigration issues, the Muslim ban and everything, for the first time I felt that my freedom in this country was being jeopardized, and that I felt that I really needed to make a work that expressed an immigrant's perspective about America, especially an Iranian immigrant. So this work and the two videos, The Land of Dreams, are my very first work that was made and shot in this country and directly critiques the American culture, but all from the perspective of an Iranian immigrant.
دهکده ناپدید شده بود. هیچ کسی نمیدونست کجا. او سوال میکرد.
Talking about The Land of Dreams, my last project, and being about the story of an Iranian woman going to New Mexico, introducing herself as an artist, asking to photograph people and asking to collect their dreams. It was exactly what I did when I was in New Mexico. I went door to door to people's home with friends and say, hi, we're Iranians and we're trying to make this project. We want to take your portrait, and also we would like to make these videos, and will you be willing to be photographed and also play in the film and then give us your dream? And it was like unbelievable, just like in the video where people say, what? The Native Americans I met, they've never met Iranians before. And I was told, don't go to the reservation. They're very unfriendly to foreigners and they don't like to be photographed and they don't like to be in a film, but it was just the opposite. What I think is really interesting anecdote is that what happens in this film with this woman is what happened to me. And these photographs that she took in the film is what I took. And the experiences that she had with encountering wonderful American people, hearing their problems, some of them are extremely poor, learning about their lives and their challenges and the life that they have lived was so emotional for me. And just like in this film where the woman was not supposed to be emotionally engaged in her subjects, I did. And by the time I left, I felt so bonded with these people. It was like when art and life sort of mimicked one another. It was very profound. I'm very busy trying to make the film version of The Land of Dreams, but it would be a more conventional narrative for a feature film. The same woman would play the lead role and go back to New Mexico. I'm really certain that's where I want to work.
این تو هستی؟
There's so much information in this show, so many videos, so much human portraits, and they're from so many different cultural backgrounds, but it's all about humanity. I think this show is about humanity. It's like all these people looking at you and make you feel that regardless of where we come from, we're so vulnerable. And there's something very sad about how in one way or another, we are at risk of political injustice. But there's something beautiful about how much we have in common, regardless of where we come from. And I hope that's what the show resonates.